Hello, everybody. I'm here to tell you guys about my science experiment, what I learned, and all about it. So, first of all, what I did was I had a bird feeder outside my house, and I did tests 20 minutes long where I observed the amount of birds that came while different noise frequencies were playing. They varied from no sound, 1000 hertz, 2000 hertz, and 4000 hertz. So, first of all, when we first put up the bird feeder, which was a few months before I started the test, there wasn't many birds, and this kind of made me curious about how they ate and the patterns and all that. So I was interested in them to begin with, and I've always been kind of interested in birds in the first place. So next, I thought this was just a good experiment because it had many real life applications, like if you wanted more birds at your bird feeder in general, or you were doing a test about them, you could just use this experiment and the results to help you out. So I thought that was a good reason why I chose this experiment, and it was just generally interesting to me. So, one issue that I faced during the experiment was one day we we conducted an experiment one day, and then that night a bear came and completely demolished the entire setup. So that was pretty bad. And the next morning, it was beyond repair in some senses. So we had to go find new components to add and find a new pole. So we had to kind of rebuild it. We made it is pretty much identical to how it was. So I don't think that affected the experiment much. Although the test after we did that had a few less birds, so maybe since the bird feeder wasn't up for a day or two, they kind of forgot it was there. So that could have altered the experiment a little bit, resulting in so little results on the second test. Um, if I was to redo this experiment, I would definitely try it all around the world in different bird ecosystems and try it out with different types of birds. I think that would be really interesting. And then another thing I thought you could try this experiment underwater and see what maybe take a submersible down 100 feet in the ocean and play sounds to see what fish or how many are attracted to see if there's any interesting animals that come up. So I thought that would be really interesting as well. I did learn a lot from this experiment in general, and it helped me answer my question a lot. So first, one interesting thing I observed was the interaction between the birds and other animals. A lot of times there would be a woodpecker at the bird feeder, or even a squirrel eating the nuts. And during that time, the smaller birds would kind of avoid eating at the bird feeder, which I thought was really interesting. That they know, I don't really know why they would be afraid of the bigger birds, but I guess they are, and it makes a difference on where they eat. So I thought that was definitely interesting. And then another thing, I have read about this before the experiment started, that birds kind of feed in patterns, and that's why I did three different series of tests instead of just two to make sure they're more accurate. And I do think this is true, and it shows in the results because the second test had significantly less birds, except for on the very final run of 4000 hertz. So I think maybe there was no real birds around, and there was no pattern actively eating until the final test. Maybe a couple came through and stopped by to be bird feeder. And then the rest of them seemed kind of consistent. So I thought that was another interesting thing, that it kind of shows bird patterns. And then for the results, I found that the birds were most attracted to the sound of 1000 hertz, which interested me because my hypothesis stated that between 1000 and 3000 hertz, or specifically 2000 hertz, would be the biggest attraction zone. So it was sort of supported, but not 100%. So I thought this was interesting because the research that I did before the experiment showed that the birds are always more attracted to that range between 1000 and 3000 hertz. So that was definitely shown in this experiment.